Adaptation is a very delicate thing. Know then that this year is 2021. The known universe is ruled by the great epic of Frank Herbert, Dune. In this time, the most precious new movie release in the universe is Villeneuve's Dune. The producers interfered with past movie directors and the fans thereof of previous Dune adaptations, cleverly intertwining one plotline with another in an attempt to form a perfect yet relatively inexpensive Dune adaptation, a super box office draw. They plan to continue this super movie and use its power for their own selfish purposes. The adaptation attempts have been carried out in a budget-driven manner for 50 years, but times have changed. The focus is now on a faithful rendition of Dune. The goal of this super movie version of Dune is in sight, but now, so close to the prize, a pandemic brought by the dreaded COVID-19 delayed the scheduled release in 2020, though now we have finally been given a solid release date of October 22nd of this year. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you, the adaptation exists as only one part of the entire story. A planned sequel has yet to be signed off on. Hidden away within the meeting rooms at Legendary Pictures are the producers, known as the money people of the film company, who have long prophesied that a potentially excellent adaptation in multiple parts would come, Villeneuve's Dune, which would lead us to a true excellence in movie adaptation. The first part of this super adaptation is Nite, rightfully known as Dune. Okay, so that was my little fun, strange intro for you guys. I wanted to have some fun with it because who doesn't love Dune? If you know it, you love it. If you don't, you probably never made it past the first chapter. So this is my information. If you're interested about me, I am a scholar. I have a master's degree in literature with a concentration in science fiction studies. And I wrote my master's thesis on Dune. Dune is the reason I got into science fiction scholarship. So I'm not going to bore you with all of this. It's just there so that you have access to it. If you want to contact me with any questions we don't get to tonight, feel free to do so. I wanted to put in a disclaimer. This is my opinion. There are many like it online, but this one is mine. My brain just sort of kept on going. So I put up a little Dune Nerds Creed. Feel free to read it all. This is not going to be as scholarly talk as I usually give because I'm doing this as a fan, much more than a scholar. And so, yes, your mileage may and probably should vary. We all have different experiences. This one is mine. And talking about the first completed adaptation of Dune, directed by David Lynch, he later disowned it. There are lots of good things that they did right, and that's probably because Frank Herbert insisted on being the writing team after Jodorowsky failed, and he knew what Jodorowsky intended to do with his book. He didn't want to risk doing that again, according to Brian Herbert, Frank Herbert's son. One of my favorite things about the 1984 version is its mood. It really captures the mood of the book, this dark, brooding, slow burn that builds eventually very quickly. The casting for 1984 was really great. I think we all recognize that a bunch of people who were once colonizers to this desert planet have adapted to it. They should probably have more melanin in their skin than we saw in the 1984 version, and that's always kind of bugged me. But the acting is pretty good, and the lighting and cinematography and most of the costumes and the characterization and the soundtrack are all really awesome in this adaptation. They really capture a lot of what Dune always meant to me when I was reading it in my head. Of course, there are some things they just didn't get right. A lot of it has to do with the tech. Their still suits I'm confused. Fremen travel a lot at night, but they're not exclusively night travelers. So having a bunch of black still suits on sand is probably not going to help them stay terrifically hidden from people who want to take them out, like the Harkonnens. Their weirding modules, I don't know. Apparently David Lynch didn't think the weirding way would translate well, so he found a way to turn voice into laser handgun things. The folding space animation is just really kind of weird. The runtime, even the longest version that David Lynch was aiming for, still would have been too short to really do justice, which affected the adherence to source material, and that was doubled down on when De Laurentiis insisted on a bunch of changes that really just pulled the movie away from the book. This whole talk was sort of brought about by fellow nerd Chris Johnson, who asked me what I wanted to see out of the new Dune, because I have very strong opinions about the previous Dune adaptations, and so that's kind of what this talk is about. The things they really just didn't get right, to the point of absolute desolation, where the third stage guild navigator, Baron Harkonnen, is supposed to be disgusting, but maybe not quite that disgusting. The Bene Gesserits were just sort of weirdly portrayed, and of course that atrocious rainstorm at the end that just had no place in the movie at all. So that was the good, the bad, and the ugly about the 1984 version. The good and the bad and the ugly about the SyFy miniseries is almost completely opposite. They got a lot of the tech right, particularly the still suits, which blend in really nicely. They don't look very like they'd actually work well, but they at least would blend into the surroundings. They stick pretty close to the source material, except for they sort of rolled all of Margot Fenrig's stuff into Aurelian's character, kind of like they did with Eowyn and Lord of the Rings, that Peter Jackson did. They left a whole line out of the Litany Against Fear in the SyFy version. The little death that brings total obliteration is one of the most perfect lines in the entire book, I think, and they took it out. And the origins of Muad'Dib apparently come from a kangaroo mouse hopping around in the desert and has nothing to do with the moon. But they have plenty of runtime to really flesh out the story. The soundtrack is pretty good, maybe not as good as Toto and Brian Eno's, but enjoyable. And the cinematography was actually pretty good. It won some awards. However, they completely failed with mood. Some of their casting choices, Jessica, I have a little picture up there, Jessica up. She does not have red enough hair to be, spoiler alert, Baron Harkonnen's daughter. So, and their sieges were half outside. None of them had waterproof doors. And the Fremen eyes are, they're supposed to be a blue on blue, which they didn't particularly do very well. And water discipline overall was lacking. You can see there in that bottom picture, their masks are just hanging off the side of their face. So I think I'll probably never be able to think about water discipline without thinking about mask discipline after the last year and a half. As far as the ugly, the sandworms just weren't great. At one point, one of them breaches the sand and then does a sharp turn and goes right back into it, which I just don't think is actually possible by the laws of physics. The guild navigators were even weirder than the ones in the 1984 version. Baron Harkonnen is mostly laughable. There's absolutely nothing disgusting or terrifying about him. And some of the costuming choices really kind of took me aback. I have here the Spacing Guild, but the Sardaukar also have these like weird beret chef hat things going on that I just don't think make good costuming. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly about Harrison's SyFy miniseries, which of course does continue into the Children of Dune, covering the events in Dune Messiah and Children of Dune. And so that's something that Lynch doesn't have going for it, but that I hope we can see come out of Villeneuve, a continuation of the story past the first book. The things that I have seen in the trailers that give me hope for this version are their sandworms. They finally look like I have always imagined to look, with the sort of baleen teeth sifting through the sand, pulling stuff in, and the aperture of the mouth can actually flare open and close, much more like an actual worm than these sort of things that later inspired graboids in the Tremors movies, right? The special effects I expect will be excellent because of Villeneuve, and likewise for mood. The soundtrack sounds pretty good from the trailers. I love that the fact that their still suits took the best parts of the 1984 version and the best parts of the 2000 version. You have this black undersuit, but then you also have camouflage on top of it so that you can blend into your surroundings no matter what. They also have better face masks than either of the previous versions. I hope that they actually wear them. The casting here is excellent. I love this push for diversity because we really do need to see more melanin in people that have adapted to live in a desert planet. And previous adaptations were just overwhelmingly white. And I just didn't think that that was very true to the source material. Runtime, I don't know. Total runtime, it depends on whether he does one sequel or two sequels. I'm not sure where he's going to end it. I suspect that the best place cinematically would to end the first half or first third of Dune by Villeneuve would be after Paul Muad'Dib takes the water of life. But that's 2/3 into the story, so I don't know where he's going to end it, but I think that's probably a very likely place to end it and leave everybody on a bit of tension for the second part. We know that there should be a second part that hasn't been signed off on yet, but that was Denis Villeneuve insisted on being able to do at least 2 movies if he was going to adapt Dune, which leaves a lot of hope for a third, and I'm not the only Dune nerd and fan who really, really hopes that we get more than just 2. The story is so deep. We really need as much runtime as possible to do a truly excellent and quality, faithful adaptation. There are some clear opportunities for Villeneuve to surpass his the previous Dune adaptations. A lot of these things are stuff that both Harrison and Lynch didn't get right even before De Laurentiis got his hands on it and Lynch disowned his Dune. The Fremen should really be blue on blue, very dark. Most of them have been pretty light. It looks here like maybe not quite dark enough, but it may just be that that's hard to see. It might just be this one particular shot. I pulled a lot of screenshots out of the trailers here. So I hope that they do something really great with folding space, if we even see it at all. I don't know that we're going to see a Guild Navigator. I do know that somebody was asked to design one, and Denis Villeneuve said, "Oh, this is great. I might use it." I don't know that he did or did not. I think we'll all find out October 22nd or shortly thereafter. I'd really like to see the Weirding Way portrayed well. I don't know if that's possible to do because I'm not so much a filmmaker as a scholar and fan. I don't know, but if there's any way to do it, the special effects of capabilities that we have now will certainly come into play there. Certainly their water discipline seems to be much more true in Villeneuve's adaptation from what I see in the trailers. A lot of these shots, I turned up the brightness just to make them more easily seen, so they're a little bit lighter than they appear in the movie. But you can see they actually have a full face mask. Underneath that face mask, they have like a cannula, which isn't quite, Frank Herbert said, actual plugs made out of a fibrous material, which one, I don't think would look very good on screen. You know, people walking around with things sticking out of their nose, kind of hard to take that seriously sometimes, I think. And, you know, we're so used to the cannulas from the first movie, I think that they thought that would work okay. Certainly they, in the trailers, don't seem to be outdoors without having their face mask on and their skin as covered as possible, which is important if you want to reduce your water loss. I love, love, love Stellan Skarsgård, so I'm so thrilled that he's going to be our new Baron Harkonnen. Of course, the one on the left there is the one from Dune, a little bit too grotesque to the point of being comedic rather than terrifying, and the one on the right is just so tame and not nearly ugly enough that he's not disgusting or terrifying. He's just sort of a big comedic clown in a red cape half the time. But Stellan Skarsgård's Baron, I am just totally like super psyched about that. And I'm also totally thrilled that it seems that finally somebody got ornithopters right. On the upper, sort of the middle of the left there, you can see the ornithopter from the SyFy miniseries, which doesn't, ornithopter is supposed to have jet capabilities, but also be able to fly like a bird, right, with wings. And that just doesn't cut it. But I pulled all of these stills out of trailers because I'm just so thrilled to see actual ornithopters that have flappy wings, that swarming around like dragonflies. I'm just absolutely psyched about that as well. I think that there's a lot of room for Denis Villeneuve's version to really do properly and by the book. There are some things in the trailers that give me pause. I think Amy summed it up very well earlier when she said she's cautiously optimistic. That would pretty much, totally wrap up my feelings for the last year and a half or more, actually. I'm not really sure how this golden armor, you can kind of see here in the middle upper left of the slide, it looks like, Asteria's armor and Thanos' armor kind of made a little armor baby, and somehow it ended up on Dune. I don't know how that happened. I don't know why it's there, and this gives me pause. But maybe it's just something that he sees in a vision. It's hard to know what you see in a trailer, how it's going to play out in a movie. Likewise, at one point, it seems like Chani is talking to Paul in his dreams and addressing him as Paul, which I take great pause at. She never calls him Paul. So that also gives me a little bit of hesitation there. That was actually something that really bugged me about the SyFy version, is that they never even mention the name Usul, much less use it when in siege, as they should. And so that was something that I was really not happy about with Harrison's version. And I have some trepidation about Villeneuve's version in that sense as well. So cautiously optimistic, yes. I do intend to see it in a movie theater, just in case you're curious. Of course, I'm very concerned about the pandemic, so I may just get together 20 of my closest or most trusted friends who don't mind wearing a face mask the whole time and rent out a theater so that we can all watch it on the big screen. I wanted to share this with you because you may have similar feelings about wanting to see it on the big screen but wanting to protect yourself. So that's my idea. I hope to make it happen. I don't know if it will, but I wanted to share it so that you could also see if you couldn't make it happen for yourself. I don't think that any of us true Dune fans want to see Villeneuve's version for the first time on a small screen. It's just not going to do it justice. Oh, now I'm getting all teary-eyed because I've been waiting for a really good version of Dune for my entire life. And cautiously optimistic, yes. Cautious, I got to hang on to that caution there, or else my optimism won't get me carried away. I do want to note that I'm dedicating this to my Uncle Buddy, and that it makes use of fair use of copyrighted materials. I support content creators maintaining copyright, and I really don't appreciate infringement on copyright as a content creator myself. So just wanted to make note of that there. I guess shoot me any of your questions. Amy, of course, will take care of that for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for the talk. That was great. I am cautiously optimistic about this film. I am. And I wanted to go ahead and pull a question out of the chat. So the question that we got from Into Tone was, how would your ideal Dune adaptation be made? Would you, like if you were in control of this situation, would you make a movie series, a TV series, a video game, something else? How would you, if you could, how would you handle the Dune story?
I think that the Dune story, the scope of the story really requires a bigger screen. So I would do a 3-part movie adaptation with each part. Dune, the book, is in 3 parts, right? You have the first part, and then the middle part, and then the last part. And they are all sort of self-contained stories that lead from one to the other. Frank Herbert wrote it that way on purpose, and I think that it makes for a perfectly decent way to break it up into a screen adaptation as a trilogy, because it was written that way. Now, of course, I don't know how Hollywood would like that idea, because the first book is really kind of slow, and the last book is nonstop with the fighting and the finding of Gurney and the development of the Faydakin and the Muad'Dib's army and all of that. So it would end up very lopsided by cinematographic trilogy standards, but I wouldn't care. Right? I would watch it that way anyway. I think if it was done for a small screen, it would have to be a limited series from the get-go, because it is a limited series, right? I think at most you could drag it out to maybe 10, 12 seasons if you really tried and started going into some of the later books. But I'm willing to bet that most of the viewership would drop off sometime after God Emperor of Dune. So I don't think that a TV series would work really well. They do have a prequel series in development, though, the Sisterhood of Dune, I believe it's called. And I know that Villeneuve has signed on to direct the pilot of that. I don't know. They finally added a woman to the writing team. Before that, it was a bunch of men making a TV series about women. And I just thought that probably wouldn't go very well. So I have some hopes that'll be better. But
excellent. All right. So question 2 that I have for you is, do you know why they removed the little death line from the litany against fear in the SyFy adaptation? Is it something about orgasms?
I don't think so. I have not found any information about that at all. And as a scholar or as a fan, I have yet to find any information about why they removed it. I think that they removed it just to make the source material a little bit more approachable, right? I will not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Everybody can get behind that. Where the fear is gone, only I will remain. Everybody. But when you start talking the little death that brings total obliteration, it's a little bit too poetic, I think, for a lot of sci-fi viewers. Not any beef against sci-fi viewers, but you know, it's not like Farscape is known for its beautifully poetic lines. I love Farscape, but you know, I think it might have just been playing to the audience a little bit. It might have also just been to cut out a few seconds here and there. I don't know. I could surmise or guess, and I've done that, but they're just guesses.
All right. Well, this was so fun. I am personally very excited. I'm glad I got to hear your thoughts about this, because this is exactly the kind of thing that I would want to talk to you about at a party. It looks like
Thank you so much for having me back. I always love talking at Nerd Night, and of course, you know, I can always be talked to counted on to talk about Dune. So,
well,
thank you so much.
Absolutely. But before we wrap up completely, that looks like there's one more question.
Okay.
And it's from Andrew. Hey,
Andrew.
Has magnificent beard.
I know, yeah.
And I don't know if he's being cheeky or not. We'll see. Would you consider doing a local theater viewing of Dune, followed by you presenting an analysis of what the movie got right/wrong?
Yes, I would totally consider that. I would be down for that. I would do my best to enunciate through my mask to make it safe for everybody, unless my fully sealing. I found a mask that's still in production. It's fully seals with N95 filters in it, so you can actually see somebody's mouth. If that hasn't shown up, I just wear my regular mask and announce clearly through it. I would totally be down for that. My thoughts maybe wouldn't be as coherent if I had just seen it for the first time, but there's always a certain amount of amusement in watching a fan/scholar mentally do this for however long until they run out of energy.
I think that could be a lot of fun. So to be continued on that. I think that's a a great note to wrap up on for
Thank you.
this particular talk. Thank you so much for your time. This was a delight, and we really appreciate you.